Welcome to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. 1 year after the catastrophic earthquake, Haiti remains in ruin and prospects look bleak. What has gone so wrong for this impoverished country? Who's to blame? The West and its NGOs, the UN, or the Haitians themselves? To discuss the situation in Haiti 1 year on, I'm joined by 12Jan2010 in New York. She is the founder and president of the Haitian Lawyers Leadership Network. Also in New York, we have Nicolas Rosset. He is an award-winning independent filmmaker. And in Washington, we go to Stanley Lucas. He is the executive director for the Washington Democracy Project and another member of our Crosstalk team, Yelena Hunga. All right, folks, Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump anytime you want. I'd like to go to you first, Stanley. A few days ago, Oxfam came out with a report, and it painted a very bleak picture here. Let me quote two sentences from it. As Haitians prepare for the first anniversary of the earthquake, close to 1 million people are reportedly still displaced. It goes on to say, less than 5% of the rubble has been cleared. Only 15% of the temporary housing that is needed has been built, and relatively few permanent water and sanitation facilities have been constructed. What has gone wrong 1 year later? I mean, there was a lot of money dedicated to rescuing Haiti from this tragedy. Not all the money has been sent. Not all the donors have sent the money. You have a lot of blue helmets there. You have a lot of security. And you have an army of NGOs. Are they just all getting in the way with each other? I mean, what is in the world going wrong?
Thank you for having me. Effectively, a year ago, the earthquake killed 300,000 Haitians. And we lost around $30 billion. But the international community responded quite quickly. We got $1.4 billion of private donation from the world, $2.9 billion from the United States, and $400 million from the international community, the European Union, Latin America.
But Stanley, how has this helped Haitian people? Because I've seen the pictures. It doesn't look like a good picture going there 1 year on. I mean, easily if I could if I go to you, what has gone wrong here? I mean, like, all the ingredients for success should be there. Easily, and go ahead. I don't want to go to you. I mean, all the ingredients should be there.
Haiti needs not charity, but justice. And until Haiti has justice, there's not going to be any structural change. The needs of as you said, as you mentioned with the Oxfam report, $10 billion was pledged on March 10th after the earthquake, and only 10% of that has been delivered, and only by some of the small countries, even part of the United States. All of the bigger countries have really not donated any of the billions of dollars they have said they would give to Haiti for reconstruction. There's no reconstructions. As a matter of fact, there's barely any sorts of clean water. As we know, there's a cholera outbreak. If there was clean water, people would not have cholera outbreak. What the fundamental problem is, and what your audience needs to understand, is that when people say they're donating money to Haiti, it's what they're doing is taking money from their right hand and putting it into their left hand, and nothing goes to Haiti, essentially, but a trickle down.
But the strategy is not working because we are building up NGOs instead of building up Haitian institutions. You have 38 NGOs who got $1.4 billion. They are implementing a patchwork of programs and those programs are not answering to the needs of Haitians. What we need is to support Haitian institutions, the private sector of Haiti, civil society, and the Haitian government. And it's not happening right now. We are strengthening
Nick, why isn't it
NGOs.
happening? Why isn't it happening? Okay, is this a Haitian phenomenon right here? It's because they're Haitians, or is it the structure of international aid, how it's being implemented, and or is this just an NGO money machine? I mean, there's so many NGOs, and they were there before the earthquake. More NGOs were there than before. All right, Nick, I want to go to you, Nick. Nick first. Go ahead.
Well, I think one part of it is that, unfortunately, and it's been the case also before the earthquake, but we have always tended to empower the NGOs much more than the Haitian authorities, you know, always pretexting that, you know, the Haitian authorities are corrupt. It's always the same game with the NGOs. Meanwhile, NGOs are there for long-term survival. They're also, you know, we call it a non-for-profit, but NGOs actually are there for, they're actually industries. They're competing with each other. The other day there was an article saying how, you know, it's the war of logos and stickers. And that's one problem, but the other problem also is the leadership. And when you hear somebody like Clinton, who's one of the most popular voices out there, a very powerful, you know, individual, saying that actually, you know, we need to know more what you're doing, guys. It clearly shows that there's a real problem of leadership in Haiti. And also, there's a problem of involving Haitians more. You know, Jean-Max Bellerive the other day said that he wished actually international organizations were working more with the Haitian authorities. So there's a lot of arrogance, but this has been going on for now, you know, more than 20 years. The way. So yeah, this has been going on for a while. The structure put in place by the international community.
All right, Stanley, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, the structure put in place by the international community, the Reconstruction Commission, control everything. The Haitian government have no control. Haitian private sector, even ourselves in the diaspora, we have been put aside. If you look at the speech 2 weeks ago of the Haitian members of the Reconstruction Commission, they are very frustrated because contracts are given to people without their knowledge, and the Haitians are completely put aside of the reconstruction process. And we need a Haitian Reconstruction Authority and be part of the process. As you know, when you talk about international aid, you cannot replace the client. And the international community, they are trying to replace Haitians. We are very grateful for the money they have given to us, but we don't have control over anything right now.
Easily, I mean, I didn't think it would happen so quickly in the program, so we already got to the blame game, okay? Everybody seems to be blaming everybody else. Well, how do we break out of this?
Well, first,
I'd like to go to easily first. Please, go ahead.
Sorry.
How do we break out of it? We have, and since today is you're broadcasting this because it's the first year anniversary. I want to first say that we lost so much. We Haitians lost so much. 300,000 people dead in 33 seconds. And so there has to be a time where this is about flesh and blood. This is not about cost effectiveness. It's not about NGO profits. It's not about U.S. export-led economies. I mean, the real problem, the basic problem, is that we have a world system where in Haiti, as it's applied, it's debt, dependency, domination, and this sort of unfair U.S. policy, where even today, when we have all of this devastation in Haiti with this apocalyptic, just unfathomable injury. And I've been doing remembrances all weekend, and I can tell you the grief, the trauma to Haitians, I mean, none of that is being translated. Everyone wants to talk about why are there over 1 million people on the streets in Haiti at the moment? Well, you know, there was help in Haiti supposedly before the January 12th. The problem, the real problem, is that we have a system where the United States and the international financial institutions have decided what is development for Haiti. And they're using right now what we call this Interim Haiti Reconstruction Commission to bring forth policies they hadn't been able to do for a long time. Right now, this Interim Reconstruction Commission has basically taken over recovery. This Haiti Interim Recovery Commission has taken over. It's forget about these elections we're talking about. President Clinton has so much titles in Haiti right now, you can't even tell what he's about because he has 4 or 5 different titles. He's part of this commission where supposedly the United States, it's in the United States, and the blame, yes, has to go to the international community because they're the ones that got rid of Haiti's democratically elected government, weakened the government, and then put on Haiti this sort of export-led economy, this economy where they say, you know, Haiti has a population of 80%, 70% peasants. And the United States says, you know, what we're going to do is move the peasants into assembly plants and give you this sort of export-led economy where the interest
Go ahead.
When the interest of the consumers abroad is more important than the domestic national production and food sovereignty of Haitians, this is what you get. You get famine, you get earthquakes where people are dying because there are too many of them came into the cities looking for jobs that the United States had pushed them off of. When you have policies where these Americans come in and destroy the livestock of the Haitian peasants, which is 1.3 million. When you have all of this, when you have all of this happening, then you have to look at, does Haiti need charity or justice?
You know, Nick, I'd like to
all
add,
that Haitians are saying is
let's
that
deal with this in a different way.
justice.
Nick, you know, Israel has talked quite a bit about outside interference. I mean, there is a long history of American interference in Haitian affairs, going over 60 years now. I mean, these are the structural problems here? Is that governance is just really ineffective because there is so much outside interference?
Well,
I think
Nick, go ahead, Nick.
I
Go ahead,
that
Nick.
is the case.
Go ahead, Nick.
If you look, I mean, since the beginning, since Haiti became independent, everything we've done, well, I'm talking about the major powers here that are involved, France and the US. I mean, it's just been despicable since actually Haiti became independent, from the reparation that Haiti had to pay to France, which is now, you know, amounted to $23 billion, to the first occupation in the 1920s, to the embargo, the many embargoes, the different coup d'etat. We've actually meddled in, and we've been supporting these two latest coup d'etat. There's clear evidence of interference here. So yeah, it's not helping. Haiti, it has not helped Haiti to develop in a normal, in its own pace, to have always this meddling and this has been going on now for a while.
All right, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to let you finish after the break. After a short break, we'll continue our discussion on Haiti. Stay with our team.
Wealthy British scion Zach Wilson, investment activist
Markets, finance, scandal. Find out what's really happening to the global economy with Max Kaiser. For a no-holds-barred look at the global financial headlines, tune in to Kaiser Report on RT.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're talking about Haiti 1 year after the earthquake. But before, let's see what Russians think about helping this country.
On the first anniversary of the earthquake that struck Haiti, people pray and call to offer more help. 1 year ago, Haiti earthquake claimed the lives of over 200,000 people and left more than 1.3 million homeless, many still living in tent cities. A year ago, the Levada Center asked Russians if they would donate to help Haitians. 45% of the respondents said they would, and the other 43% would not. There is no unanimity since the aid delivered to Haiti by the entire world is now called aid industry, and public fears it would not reach the recipients. Back to you, Peter.
Okay, Stanley, one of the greatest criticisms of the whole aid effort towards Haiti after this horrific earthquake, but in the way the West deals with aid in general. And it's called a culture of dependence. And Haiti seems to be the quintessential example of creating a culture of dependence, okay? And how do you break out of that? Because I think Easily brings up a very good point. I think maybe the Haitians deserve respect, not charity.
I agree with you. Of every $5 spent by the international community, we control only 3 cents. We don't need more aid, we need better aid. But we need to fix our own house. We have witnessed the failure of governance in Haiti. As you know, the past 3 or 4 presidents, President Jean-Claude Duvalier left with $600 million of our money. We could not get it back. President Aristide stole $350 million. We didn't get it back. I think we need better governance. And also we need the input of the Haitian diaspora. As you know, according to the World Bank, 83% of competent Haitians are overseas. We are 4 million people living in 20 countries. So you need the input of the human resources, Haitian human resources that are overseas to strengthen the capacity of the state. If we can address that, the country can move better forward.
Okay, Izzy, what do you think about that? I mean, just blame it on the corruption of past presidents. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I don't.
I didn't think so.
Your audience should know that I was a representative. I was the lawyer for President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And Mr. Lucas has cannot prove what he's saying. He's just saying it. President Aristide was the first democratically elected president of Haiti, and the reason why he was deported to South Africa by the international community under the Bush Jr. administration was because he was trying to include the masses into the politics of Haiti, trying to not deal with the monopolies. What we have in Haiti is 0.5% of the population, the Haiti oligarchy, that own 90% of the wealth and that act as a overseer for the imperialists. So you have these small families, this small, tiny group of Haitians, light-skinned Haitians, mostly from Arab or Syrian background, who were folks that Haiti gave asylum to, who are now the ones who are sort of the overseers, the ones who are now working. If any contracts have been given right now, you could be sure that contract was giving not to Haitian small, tiny businesses, but these families who have very, very strong connections to the Clintons, to the Bush, who really run U.S. policy. And so you have a situation where a lot of people focus on who's at the top, whether it's Aristide or Préval or Duvalier, but we really need to also look at who is the economic force in Haiti and what are they doing, and how they are connected to the global elite in America.
All right, Stanley, go ahead, jump in, then I want to go to Nick. Go ahead, Stanley, go ahead.
Okay, I agree with that we need more market economy and break the monopolies. But also we need the support of the international community to fight corruption. As an example of that, our high administrative court have established how both President Duvalier and President Aristide stole our money. In the case of Peru, where Alberto Fujimori stole a bunch of money, the U.S. did help Peru recuperate that money. For example, we can set an example with both President Duvalier and President Aristide based on the official documents of the country showing that those two leaders stole around $900 million of that country. If we can get that money back, future president of the country of Haiti will know that they cannot do that anymore.
Nick, if I can go to you. I mean, go ahead, easily, go ahead, real quick, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we've already established that there's a difference between who's a dictator, who's not a dictator, and I've said that with regards to Duvalier and President Aristide. But I just want to make the point with respect to something that Mr. Lucas just said about corruption. The difficulty here is that the corruption in Haiti comes from the very, very top. It comes from the fact that the United States would unseat a democratically elected government. It comes from the fact right now what we're dealing with, which is a fraudulent election, that the United States would bring in the OAS and CARICOM and all of these international institutions to try to solidify an election that was clearly clearly disenfranchised.
I'd like to jump to Nick here because you bring up a very good Nick, please. I want to remember you're on the program here. Nick, I mean, easily brings up a very interesting point here. Is that because of the lack of perception of legitimacy of the political system in Haiti, because of the outside manipulation and interference? What I'm getting at, to try to kind of go a long circle here, that's what's really one of the biggest problems in aid and reconstruction here, is because you don't have institutions that have a whole lot of legitimacy in the eyes of the people.
Well, it's a vicious circle.
Exactly.
Because the problem is, like in Washington, you have a right-wing lobby that has been for the last 50 years trying to play the divide game, whether it's in Haiti or Venezuela or Bolivia. Anytime they didn't like somebody who has been elected, they always came, play the divide game, use people, I'm sorry for Mr. Lucas, use people like Lucas actually to destabilize any government that had been elected. Of course, Aristide was not perfect, but he knows it, but he was elected by the majority of people. His party is still being prevented from running. And so yeah, you have a situation right now where you're going to still have aid not actually flowing in. You know, most of this aid, which was pledged, is not being disbursed yet. And I think the reason of that is, like, most leaders in the world and most institutions know perfectly well, or actually are scared now, that any future, president will be, there's going to be some efforts from countries like the US or France to destabilize them, and there's going to be another coup d'etat. There's going to be other people like Lucas and others who are going to try to do everything to destabilize them. It's a problem in Haiti. It's a problem in other countries, and that's the real problem. The reason why the money is not flowing in is not flowing in. No, I know, but everybody knows, you worked for the IRI for 4 years before Aristide was overthrown.
To those conspiracy theory.
This is all over the news. Yes. No, it's not. It's a real fact
because if you make an analysis
only against the Lavalas government of Aristide. That's a fact.
Okay,
since
Stanley.
you brought up, Aristide and how corrupt, and that's another dictator. It's important that the public knows how you were involved in playing the divide game and how you were involved and used by white supremacist right-wingers in DC to destabilize one government.
Why they failed? Because they were a dictatorship.
That had been elected.
Okay, Stanley, let Stanley reply here. Stanley, go ahead.
Listen, Mr. Lucas, even Mr. Preval had declared recently through WikiLeaks.
If you analyze the Duvalier dictatorship, one thing that you will see that Duvalier was not managing the country for the interests of the people. That was a dictatorship. He stole $600 million of the country. That was a corrupt government, the Duvalier dictatorship. If you analyze the democratically elected president when he came to power, he was a pooperist. 9 years later, he owned $350 million of the people's money, and he was killing political opponents, killing journalists, killing civil society leaders who disagree with him, and stole many elections. So that's why I think if we want to move forward, there are two things that need to be done. We need to influence and change the political culture of the country, make sure that you have Democrats in power who respects the rule of law and the Constitution, and ensuring the international community support to Haiti.
Basically,
international aid goes
exactly. Easily, please jump in. Easily,
sure that
go ahead. Please, Stanley. Please do not
filibuster. This is coming from a man who actually helped take. Okay, this is coming from a man talking about democracy. Mr. Lucas has absolutely no legitimacy to talk about democracy in Haiti. This man helped take down, and I don't have to say it, you can just go to the New York Times and read mixed signals where they talk about what Mr. Lucas is and what not just, forget about Mr. Lucas, okay? Mr. Lucas is just an employee, just like all of the others that are employees of USAID or International Republican Institute. These are folks, Haitians that are used to be the face of imperialism in Haiti, and Mr. Lucas was part of that back in 2004. I want to focus here on what Haiti needs.
I am not
Haiti
into ideological
needs
debate. Haiti needs
clean water.
You're trying to portray the country's problem as an ideological problem. The country's problem are not ideological. The country's problem is a failure
of leadership
in the country,
to the World Bank.
You have strong
you need to tell that to the World Bank.
You
need to tell that to Clinton. You need to tell that to those people.
The Constitution
but you need
the
to
laws
tell
of the country
Mr. Lucas,
and stealing basically all the resources of the country.
All right, I'm going to jump in right here. I'm going to jump in right now quite forcefully. Nick, I want to give you the last word. What do we have to do so we don't have such a gloomy picture 1 year from now? Real quick.
Well, we need to be sure that all the money that we gave to these institutions, to these NGOs, goes now to the emergency situations, to clear the rubble, to give, as Ezili said, fresh water. Apparently there's only MSF and 2 other organizations dealing with this water issue. So people are dying with cholera every day. We need to make sure that we can create some mostly controlled by Haitians, auditing systems that knows exactly where the money goes.
I'm going to have to jump in here.
Empower Haitians.
I'm going to have to jump in here. We've run out of time here. I want to thank everybody for a very
15 seconds.
spirited debate. Many thanks to my guests today in New York and in Washington. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. And remember, crosstalk rules.